The new Hangout event gave us a chance to try a character that will come out soon, Thoma, a 4-star Pyro Polar Muser. This character was highly anticipated primarily because of his appearance, but his skill set also picked up the interest of the community. Specifically, he's an off-field shielder with capabilities that looked interesting for the current best Pyro hypercarry, Hu Tao. The reason is, Hu Tao needs a second Pyro unit in her team for the classic Anemo comp to work, since by herself, Hu Tao can't reliably apply Pyro on opponents outside of her E-rotation, which makes it impossible for the Anemo character to swirl the element. Various characters have already been able to cover the role in the past, like Amber and Bennett, but Thoma became a potential competitor for this spot thanks to his shield, which is helpful for a character that prefers to stay at low HP like Hu Tao. Additionally, Thoma is also a sub-DPS, since his elemental burst generates a pyro attack after the on-field character uses a normal or a charge attack, with a cooldown of 1 second, which earned him the name of Pyro Shinkyu. However, this isn't necessarily a good thing, and to understand this, a quick summary of elemental gauge theory and internal cooldown theory is needed. These explanations can also be found on the Keqingmains theory crafting library, which I'll link in the description below. As everybody playing Genshin Impact should know, when any elemental attack hits an opponent, the element is applied on him too. This application can last a while in the case of Pyro for example, or it can end instantly like for Anemo or Geo. For the applications that stick on the opponents for a limited amount of time, the duration is determined by the so-called elemental gauge, which in basic terms is the elemental power of the attack the application originated from, which must not be confused with damage. Each attack has its own elemental gauge. Separate elemental gauge applications of the same element basically get added on top of each other, stretching the gauge duration. Each source of application also has an internal cooldown, which means that when this source applies the element on an opponent, it enters a cooldown during which it can't apply the element again. Once again, every attack has its own specific internal cooldown. When an element is applied on an opponent who already has another element applied on him, different things can happen depending on the elemental reaction generated. In the specific case of a Vaporize reaction, where Hydro is applied on the opponent and your attack is Pyro, the Hydro application's duration gets reduced by a determined amount. I won't go in detail about each character's elemental gauge and internal cooldowns, as you can find them on the Keqingmains site, but practically, Shinkyu's application strength and frequency is enough to make Hu Tao's charge attack vape 99% of the time. However, when you add another frequent pyro source in the mix like Thoma, things might be different. Let's start from the beginning. Thoma is a 80 cost burst character, meaning he requires a hefty amount of energy each rotation to cast his Q again. Both his Q and E generate a shield, and if a shield gets recasted while it's still active, it gets more durable, up to a maximum amount. Generally, Thoma's shield is one of the most durable in the game, being only clearly worse than Zhongli's shield. His E skill generates 3 to 4 particles on a 15 seconds cooldown, although in my tests I've noticed 3 particles are much more frequent than 4. The cooldown might sound harsh, but in the context of Hu Tao, where you have 9 to 11 seconds of air field time where you can swap out in each rotation, it's not that annoying. Still, he requires a huge amount of energy to be used, so it looks like energy recharge weapons and the Severed Fate artifact set might be optimal. Damage-wise, his sub-DPS potential is nowhere near Shinkyu's, as most estimates put him at around 90,000 damage per rotation, at a relatively high investment. Now, let's focus on the combination between him and Hu Tao. Primarily, let's keep in mind that Thoma's Q attacks have an internal cooldown of 2.5 seconds. On a generic Anemo-based team, the most practical sequence would be Thoma using his skill and burst in rapid succession, the Anemo unit swirling the pyro element, Xinkyu's skill followed by his burst and another skill if you're using Sacrificial Sword, and then a Hu Tao standard rotation. Notice how Thoma's sequence happens before Xinkyu's in the rotation, while ideally it would be the contrary, since that would lead to longer duration of the pyro rest thread once Hu Tao's rotation starts. The reason this can be done in normal circumstances is because Xinkyu's words clear the pyro application if you're too close to the enemy. You can get around this by using Kazuha, but we'll get to this later. Let's see what happens once Hu Tao uses her E and starts spamming her normal one plus charge attack. I prefer to use a normal attack before the E, so one of Thoma's attacks vaporizes and the burst enters its internal cooldown. First few Hu Tao vapes go well. As you can see, her charge attack and some normal attacks are generating vaporized reaction consistently. But let's see what happens when Thoma's internal cooldown ends and he procs a vape. You can see that it cleared the hydro application on the opponent, which prevented the following Hu Tao's charge attack vape reaction. Let's see a second clip. Here I have not used a normal attack before Hu Tao's E, so for the first charge attack sequence, all pyro sources are vaping simultaneously. This causes Xinkyu's hydro application to get reduced more than usual, eventually causing the pyro sources to overwhelm the hydro one, situationally resulting in some Xinkyu vapes. Do you get where I'm going with this? Adding another pyro source to the equation puts an unsustainable load on Xinkyu's hydro application if the objective is to consistently vape with all Hu Tao's charge attacks. Let's say that in a full rotation, this results in 2 missed charge attack vapes. The damage lost from this depends on how good your Hu Tao build is, but in the worst case scenario, what you lose from this damage-wise is higher than Thoma's total damage throughout a rotation, which is very bad. Let's say that realistically, you lose 3 vapes due to Thoma's application. How do things look then? In comparison, other pyro options don't interfere with Hu Tao's charge attacks, while also providing buffs to amplify her damage further, like Bennett with his Q, or Amber with Elegy of the End. Thoma's best argument here is his shield, but once again, if you have Yanfei's Constellation 4, she gets to cast a very durable shield too, while not having the same sub DPS issues. Now, as I said previously, Kazuha makes things better for Thoma, in several ways. First, the order between Thoma and Xinkyu in the rotation. Thanks to Kazuha He, you can use Xinkyu before Thoma, use Thoma's skill and burst, then switch to Kazuha and use a normal attack followed by an elemental skill. The normal attack will cast a Thoma burst attack, which will apply pyro in the area, infusing Kazuha's E with the element, allowing him to swirl it. The second advantage is just as impactful. You can use Kazuha's Q to get another hydro source by casting it after Xinkyu's swords hit the enemy. By doing this, as long as the enemies stay within Kazuha's Q field, the hydro application will be strong enough to sustain the Hu Tao Thoma rotation, although this might not always be practical. As a result, Thoma is a general use comfort pick that certainly doesn't offer the highest damage ceiling for the Hu Tao vape team, with the exception of when Kazuha is on the team, where he becomes competitive. His Constellations makes things a bit better. Specifically, his Constellation 6 buffs Hu Tao's normal and charge attack damage by 15% in the rotation while she's protected by the shield. But this isn't enough to offset the lack of some charge attack vapes. If you're looking for a character that can make your Hu Tao feel safer in a vape team, and you're lacking Yanfei's Constellation 4 and Zhongli, then Thoma might be worth building. Otherwise, he's just not the perfect Hu Tao partner many were waiting for. That's it for this video. Thanks for staying until the end. If you liked it, make sure to click on the thumbs up, leave a comment and subscribe. See you next time!